Greetings hobbyists, this is Artisans of All, and in this video we're going to explore how cost-effective 3D printing can be for creating terrain. Recently I got this filament 3D printer. It's the Ender 3v3 and I got it so that I could 3D print terrain. There's a video going through a review of this in the description if you want to check it out, but it's so that I can print things like this. Something that's not really suitable for a resin printer because it would be a bit too fragile, whereas with a filament printer it's really solid. So it's a much more suitable printer for 3D printing terrain as it's going to be more robust. But just how cost effective is it actually going to be? Well, I thought it'd be quite fun to have a look at this compared to some scenery from a well-known manufacturer and have a look at what we can do for the same price. So going on to Games Workshop's web store, I found this is a good example of something that I wanted. Some terrain that's going to be ruined, so a bit damaged, and varying in height, so it's going to look quite interesting. Now I have to say it's been a long time since I actually purchased some terrain from Games Workshop, and I was a little bit surprised at the cost. I wasn't quite expecting something this small to be £30, and there was a lot of other examples. For example, this building is £60 and not actually available, and to get something that looks close to a set is about £140. And when I say a set, I would say this wouldn't really cover much of a table. You're probably going to end up needing maybe 3 of these to get a decent game's worth, and there's not a lot of variable height in this, so I'm going to be honest, the offer was pretty disappointing. So I went online to find some 3D printable files and started looking at War Scenery. I mentioned them in the last video when I was reviewing this printer, and they had some really nice looking stuff. And they actually have a Kickstarter out, which looks really exciting. It finishes on the 30th of March, so there's not that long to get involved in that if you want to. And War Scenery were nice enough to send me a few of the files to try out. Now you can see there's a really nice variation in a lot of the things on offer here. A lot of the stretch goals have been hit, so you get some really cool terrain like these large walls. There's also infantry if you're interested in those, and they look really nicely designed. But the bit that I'm interested in is the terrain. And happily you can buy bits individually, so you can buy just the terrain if that's what you're interested in. And especially things like these ruins, I think you'll agree look really nice. But they also do the buildings as a whole, so you can have some really nice variation in what you've got on a board. And there'll be some nice differences in height, which obviously makes a board really interesting. So I thought I'd start with some ruins, as that was what I was first looking for, and see how much I could get for around £30. So I was off to Amazon to buy some filament. I grabbed this grey sunroof filament for £18. There's a link to that in the description if you're interested in it. And because the files for the terrain are designed so that you can build them flat on the build plate, it's literally a matter of just dragging it into your slicer software, getting it sliced, and going straight to 3D printing it. So here are the first 3 sets of walls, and I think they're really nice. I mean, we can do a lot with them because they're just going to be really versatile, just being corners, so we can have something relatively dull or something a bit more interesting in setup. But the detailing on them's great. You've got these really chunky, sort of thick exteriors, which is really nice. It's got everything that I really want a building to have in terms of scenery, and more importantly, I can really smack it around and nothing's going to break. A really big benefit over things like resin. Now with these 3 walls done, admittedly I got a little bit distracted and started having a look at some of the other files that are offered by War Scenery, because in the Kickstarter you can go back and purchase bundles of some of their older Kickstarters as well. And one of them is this Grimdark Outpost set, which is really fun. It's a lot of bunkers, and I thought that might look really nice on the outskirts of the city, so that I've got some different options on what I do with my scenery. And then I came back to this more complete building for the warehouse where the ruins come from. I thought they'd look really good next to each other to have one building that was destroyed and one that wasn't. So 1 spool and £18 into this at this point, and already we're looking pretty good in comparison to Games Workshop. We've got 3 of these walls. I haven't stuck on the little platforms for them yet. A whole bunker, which is really cool because the top comes off so we can put models in, or I'm probably actually just going to glue that down, but really nice perfect fit on that. And we've got a complete building with all of the internal details. I should say I didn't quite have enough filament in 1 spool to also do the roof. I've only got 1 section of it. Really it's quite nice that the files from War Scenery are the right size for the Ender 3v3, so I haven't had to cut anything up. I probably should have printed the roof. If I hadn't have got distracted by the bunker, that would have been fine. I have got a little bit of filament left on the spool, as you can see. Probably not enough to get anything done by itself, but I think if I'd have done it the other way round, I'd have got the roof of this building done and the bunker without the bunker's roof, and then be moving on at this point. I should also say I did print this test piece, so a little bit of wastage there, but other than that, there's been no actual wastage in terms of the printer. I've had no misprints or anything like that. The scenery is really chunky. Like, I really like how thick everything is. It looks like a proper building, as opposed to some of the scenery that you can get, which is really skinny. So I'm really looking forward to getting this on the table. So what I'm going to do now is actually get a half filament roll that I've got left over from testing the Ender 3v3. It's Creality's own brand. It's black, so you'll be able to see the difference between them as well. I actually think that I got slightly better results from that filament too when I did the test printing, so that'll be interesting to see. Now, that is a little bit more expensive, but only by a few pounds, so actually I think I'd probably go for that in the future anyway. So let's get the rest of that roof printed. Well, it only took the rest of the afternoon to get the roof printed. I still haven't glued it all together, but you can see it's designed with holes in so that we can actually lift it on and off really, really easily, and the fit is perfect. So once this is glued with the end part on, this is going to fit absolutely brilliantly. Really, really good job from War Scenery, and I'm really looking forward to this being on the table with some of the ruins. I think it will look really, really nice together. So let's print some other bits as well. So here's the end result. 1.5 spools later, and we've got a load of ruins, a full building, 2 power generators, a bunker, and 2 landing pads. I think you're probably going to agree that's a lot better for 30 quid than this. Now, let's be perfectly honest, this is going to have some issues compared to spending some money at, let's say, Games Workshop. It takes time to print things, and there's things that you can do about that. Now, there was a bit of an interesting experiment that I did while doing this, and that was on these power generators. I wanted to see the difference between doing a 0.12mm layer height and a 0.2mm layer height in terms of speed and quality. So you can see the quality difference here. I think it's fairly negligible. The 0.12mm is definitely better, but I'm not sure you'd ever really notice it. Now, the thing I found interesting about this is doing it at the 0.2mm layer height did save a lot of time. It saved me about 4.5 hours on the print, which is a pretty substantial saving. But if we're talking about how much you can get for the money, interestingly, it added about 4 meters of extra plastic that was used. So adding about 5%. Now, there's definitely some decisions to make on what matters more, quality, printing time, or speed. For me, the speed wasn't really a big deal. I generally set it printing in the evening and then it'd be ready by the next morning, or I'd set it in the morning and it'd be ready in the evening when I got back from work. So saving that 4 hours didn't really do a lot for me. Also, for full transparency, I think I probably printed about £32 worth of filament. Partly because that this filament was slightly more expensive, though I'd say it was worth the cost for me. I just get a better print quality off of it. But also I got to the point where I needed to still print out these ramps, and I didn't want to leave them without ramps, so I did that. But at this point I've got 2 little parts missing here that are meant to join them together, but this was as close as I could get to £30, and I wanted to do the test that I said I was going to do. Other things that, obviously, this is a really unfair test. The Creality Ender 3v3 costs about £350 from Creality, and obviously you need to buy the files as well. Now, for me, that's really worth it. I'm going to be printing a lot at some point in the future, and the cost of 3 of those really bad-looking sets of terrain would cost more than this would by itself. But if you're only going to be printing small amounts, maybe that's not going to be worth it to you, and there's always this scale of production that you need to bear in mind. But I think you'd probably save your money after maybe 2 tables worth of terrain just on the cost of the material, and I'm definitely going to end up printing more terrain than that. So for me, this is a really sound investment. I mean, there are dangers to this. The big danger being that having printed out these landing pads, you automatically start finding things that you want to print that you hadn't planned beforehand, like these platforms that come with a Kickstarter that I think would look awesome with landing pads on top of it. So I can see me printing a lot more things than I originally intended to, but then again, it's at such a lower cost that you're just going to get a really good looking table by the end of it. And well, I guess the other danger is that it adds to your pile of unpainted shame, and as I paint quite slowly, that is definitely an issue. But I thought I'd show some quick pictures of some painted versions that I've seen online, just so you can get an idea of what this looks like when it is painted. If you are interested in anything that I've covered, be it the printer, the filaments, or the designs here, it's all linked in the description. I will warn you again that the Kickstarter ends on the 30th of March, so if you want any of these at the discounted price, I would really have a look at that, because you can buy them in a bundle instead of having to buy the buildings individually, and it works out as a massive saving. As always, I hope you found that video useful, a little bit different to what I normally do, but I thought it's some interesting content surrounding 3D printing and what you can get out of it. If you do want to see more like this, then do say so in the comments, or if you just prefer having things that are related to the 3D design itself, also say. It's really good to know what you like. Have a great day, guys.